You know, the biggest problem I have with the Switch OLED is the Joy-Cons. Now, don't get me wrong, I actually appreciate the Joy-Cons design for their compactness, simplicity, and versatility above all else. After all, it's kind of hard to imagine these controllers looking any different while retaining the wide range of features and use cases they have. After playing with them for a few hours, my hands get cramped. Them being so flat is great for fitting into cases, but not exactly wonderful for ergonomics. Plus, their low-profile sticks don't always feel the best to use. They're great for quick play sessions, but make me want to reach for the Pro controller before too long. Combined with their tendency to drift over time, they're fairly compromised controllers, and I've been looking for other options for a while. Luckily, NYXI thinks it might have built a solution with its Wizard, a split Joy-Con controller that resembles an old-fashioned Wavebird, with a few more buttons for turbo and macros. Now, Shank Mods created something similar but hyper-custom a few years ago, and it looked slick as heck. So when we saw NYXI launch their controller a couple weeks ago, we immediately jumped on it. Expectations were pretty high, and to be honest, they didn't disappoint. With the exception of a kinda mushy A button, all the buttons feel and sound incredibly clicky. I love how solid this D-pad feels to just click in particular. And while I generally prefer triggers that have a longer travel, the hair triggers here are actually satisfying to click as well, while feeling a lot more comfortable to rest my fingers on than just regular Joy-Cons. Maybe even my Pro controller. The same goes for the Hall effect joysticks they've packed in. They're smooth to move, with the higher profile feeling much better than the Joy-Con stubs. Compared to the Pro controller, they also feel just a tad bit better, though I still can't quite articulate why. NYXI claims that these sticks will never drift. That claim does have some support based on the general difference in how Hall effect joysticks work compared to the mechanisms currently in Nintendo's controllers, but it'll take some time to see how valid those claims turn out to be. For now, the mechanism's at least a better tactile feeling, and a bit finer in the sensitivity department overall. Plus, unlike typical replacement Joy-Cons, the stick caps themselves are even removable and hypothetically replaceable if they become damaged. NYXI even includes rounded joystick rings in the box in case you don't like the segmented rings that come pre-installed. I haven't wanted to make that swap yet, and to be honest, they're a bit difficult to remove, even for the purposes of this video, but I can appreciate the feature nonetheless. On paper, this all sounds great, which is why we got the controller in the first place. Fortunately, it got even better when we slotted the controllers in and switched on some games. Now, to properly test the controls, we tried a few different games across multiple genres: Splatoon 3, Mario Kart 8, and, of course, Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. Getting it out of the way first, Smash Bros. Feels great on this controller. Pretty much expected for any decent controller with a Gamecube layout. The left thumbstick feels responsive, and the button layout is ideal for dealing out damage with basic attacks before flicking the right stick for a smash attack. Of course, it doesn't cover up the fact that I'm pretty terrible at the game overall, but I think folks that tend to use Gamecube adapters to play docked will enjoy this quite a bit for handheld play, if they can excuse the shorter triggers, different button feel, and full-size C-stick. But these are definitely more than Smash controllers. While playing Mario Kart, the larger A button felt comfortable to hold down for minutes on end during a race, although I still wish it didn't feel quite as mushy. The wide clicky triggers also felt so much better than a Joy-Con, both for resting my finger and quickly shooting off items. My only real complaint is that the left joystick did feel a tad bit too sensitive at first, but I've kinda gotten used to it over time, and admittedly, I enjoy that slight extra degree of movement. That sentiment transferred over quite well to Splatoon, although dealing with camera sensitivity was better dealt with within the game's settings rather than adjusting during a match. The sheer size of the controller and comfortable grip felt perfect for tense ink fights in turf war, although that huge A button doesn't really help any here. In a game that doesn't actually assign any actions to it, this might as well not exist. In fact, only B is actually used among the face buttons. Even still, the wider layout of this controller might not be as great a benefit to shooters, just in general, where thumbs need to constantly flip back and forth between face buttons and camera controls. It's just a tad bit more space to travel, but that tiny extra time it takes to do that could make all the difference when things get tense. For dedicated use, I'm guessing folks will want to make liberal use of button remapping and macros assigned to the extra set of buttons on the grip, which is thankfully not too difficult to use. For anyone who can either adjust to the slight layout differences or make use of the extra flexibility, I'm guessing they'll have a great time with this controller. I know I definitely have. Okay, so far, this controller is pretty much all around better than Joy-Cons in almost every way, with the exception of, maybe compactness. For racing, shooters, and fighting games, the only real downsides comparatively seem to be that the A button is kinda mushy, the sticks have a slight adjustment period, and the extra travel between buttons might be a little less ideal for games like shooters that require quickly switching between action buttons and sticks. Which, honestly, I could see those factors being a real turnoff to some folks, especially anyone who bought a Switch for quick bursts of gaming and doesn't want to commit to learning a new layout or figuring out how to, take these with them on the bus. For anyone willing to adjust though, the Wizard's more comfortable, feels better to use in general, and offers a layout that could be more beneficial for games like Mario Kart or Super Smash Bros. Even for slower RPGs, I found the controller better in general than my Joy-Cons, just on the basis of comfort and the differently shaped face buttons being easier for my thumbs to differentiate. That's especially bolstered by the fact that these are even pretty great wireless controllers. During our testing, we detached the controllers a few times and even used motion controls in a couple games. Surprisingly, they held up pretty well. Just like Joy-Cons, they charge and pair via the rails, and no connectivity drop happened when we suddenly detached them. We honestly initially thought they'd be too bulky to separate out and use individually, but no. The grips on each side work great to stabilize the controllers while pressing buttons. Even while tilting or rolling for motion controls, it's incredibly stable, albeit a bit awkward to do with a large controller in each hand. That awkwardness did turn out to be a bit more tiring than regular Joy-Cons after a while sitting on my couch playing through Fire Emblem Engage, but sliding them into the provided clip solved that almost immediately. Just be aware that each of these controllers charge independently, and if you want to use them as a wireless controller for any long stretch of time, you'll need two USB-C cables. Considering that these are first and foremost Joy-Con replacements, I'm not too salty about that though, considering I can just slide them into the Switch and pick up my Pro controller when the batteries get too low. But yeah, I'm actually surprised at how frictionless these are about 95% of the time. You never know what to expect from these third-party Joy-Cons, but these are just extremely solid. Unfortunately, this is where I tell you that it's not perfect. Even for someone who can adjust to the new controller style and its various quirks, like me, there are some kinda glaring issues with it. For example, when splitting the pads for two-player mode, it's not as clean an experience as regular Joy-Cons. The extra size feels great, and especially for the right controller, the buttons feel better than a standard Joy-Con, but due to how they're angled, the shoulder and trigger buttons feel kinda awkward shoved into the palms of my hands while holding them sideways. During gameplay, the initial rumble settings also felt way too strong, to the extent that we generally chose to turn off rumble in games altogether. NYXI advertises the ability to adjust rumble strength on their product page, but it's not immediately clear how to actually do that. In fact, if we didn't look on their website or lost the user manual altogether, we'd have no way of knowing that's even an option. Similarly, the lighting can be a bit awkward. I'd like that the buttons have a backlight, great for playing in darker rooms and whatnot, but the lights seem to turn on randomly while connected to my Switch in sleep mode. It's a bit too early to say if it has any impact whatsoever on the battery life, but it's extremely awkward to see the lights flash on even while no one's touched it for a while. Same goes for when it's docked and charging. I'm fine with the lights initially turning on to indicate that they've started charging, but they really don't need to stay on for as long as they do. These are all pretty small gripes in the grand scheme of things, but small gripes can add up over time when it comes to controllers. That's especially true since at $70, these controllers aren't exactly cheap. For sure, it's $10 cheaper than a new pair of Joy-Cons, but I couldn't exactly call them an impulse purchase for anyone on a budget. Unless you're actively looking for a replacement pair of Joy-Cons, then I guess these are your option. Luckily for NYXI, I think there's enough substance here to help me personally overlook those smaller issues I mentioned. For now at least. With the great comfort, quality joysticks, and clicky buttons, I'm pretty satisfied, and I'm sure it could make a great secondary controller for anyone currently looking for one. Honestly, after the first time I used the Wizard, I haven't really removed them except to try out wireless features, to pack the Switch into my case, or, for this video. For the foreseeable future, these are definitely going to be my go-to controller for playing handheld. These have been my thoughts though. I'd love to know yours. Are you interested in Gamecube-style Joy-Cons for your Switch? What would your ideal Switch controller actually look like? Let me know down in the comments. Also, check out the video description where we'll drop a link to this controller. As always, if you found this video interesting or informative, go ahead and click that like button, and then go ahead and also click subscribe to catch more video game tech videos in the future. That's all for this video. Until next time, catch you later.